and welcome back to Characters Like Us, a podcast where we explore the real world through diverse and inclusive storytelling. I'm Gitanshi, and I am a South Asian woman in her mid 20s. I use she, her pronouns. I'm wearing a gray sweater and have long black hair. And in my background, you can see a gray couch as well as a bookshelf and a wall with some posters and a tote bag on it. I am so excited to introduce to you a very special guest, one of my very favorite authors, Tara Sidhoo Fraser. Tara is a Vancouver based queer writer and creator of South Asian and British ancestry. She graduated from the University of Victoria with a BA in anthropology, and her work has been published with Osterstraddle and Enoth magazine, among others. She is also the author of the memoir When My Ghost Sings. Tara, welcome to Characters Like Us.
Thank you. Hello. Thank you. Hello. My name is Tara Sidhoo Fraser. I am wearing a black turtleneck. I have long dark hair.
Thank you so much for being here with me today. I'm so excited to talk with you. And just for a little icebreaker, we have a segment on our podcast where called Numbered Narratives. So I'm going to ask you to pick your favorite number between 1 and 34, and then I'll ask you a fun bookish question that corresponds to the number you picked.
Okay, let's choose number 11.
Okay. Ooh, 11 is, do you like to annotate your books or keep them pristine?
Oh no, 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 no. I'm like, I love people that do that, but I'm very messy with books. I dog ear. I dog
I
ear
was
them.
actually going to ask you that.
Yeah, no, for sure. And there's food stains on the corners of my books as well. But I find them to be very well loved. And when I really enjoy a book, like after I've read it a few times, it like the front cover isn't flat anymore. Yeah, I'm staring at a book that I have over in my living room, and it's just sitting there, and it's like this. The cover is completely open because it doesn't close anymore. Yeah,
Honestly, I love that. I'm also the same way. I've kind of had phases where, I don't know, I think I got like shamed for dog earing my books a ton, and then I stopped doing it. And then now I'm back to it. I especially love the feeling when you reread a book that you've loved, and then you can see like little notes you've made in the margins, or like even you can tell, like, oh, I love this page or this quote.
yeah,
And then even looking at books on your bookshelf where you can kind of like see the cracks in the spine because you read them so much. I personally think I respect people who like to keep their books pristine, but I just
yeah.
think that like having like those quote messy books is just like a way to show that they're so loved.
For sure. I think it's like that. Like if you see somebody's like living room or writing room and their bookshelf and their books are pristine, I'm like, oh, that's so nice. It's like a museum or an art store. But
Yeah.
I mean, so they're beautiful to look at, right? But I think just and it has to do with personality. But I'm messy. They're very well loved.
I just think, they feel alive. Like even the bookshelf feels
Yeah.
alive. I like, I sometimes I'm like, oh, maybe my bookshelf should be more. Sometimes I have books that are like, stacked one way and then
Yes. Yes.
and then stacked in another, some that are like on top of the others.
Yep.
And I've come to be like, you know what? It just shows that the bookshelf is very lived in.
Yes.
I reach for these books a lot and I've come to appreciate that. And it's cool that you're that way also.
Definitely.
This is like a totally random question, and not really one that I had prepared to ask you or anything, but I'm curious based on this conversation or this quick discussion. Are you somebody that when you're writing, do you reference other books or have like this set of inspiration books for what you're
Mhm.
currently writing, and do you like reach for those often in the writing process?
Oh no, for sure. I personally just have um not taken, like I've taken like one or two creative writing courses. Um, so I'm not well versed educationally or academically in creative writing or writing in general. Um, so yes, I do that generally. With my memoir, I was on my couch and I had piles of my favorite books. And when I read a book that really reaches me, I consume it. I'm in the story, and I can feel the words, taste the words, and I sound very dramatic right now, but
No,
it
I love this.
um and I when I am writing a story, not for anybody else, just selfishly, purely for me, I want to receive that same emotion. Um and not the same emotion, but just in parallel, like to be able to reach that aspect of me. And so when I read a specific paragraph or chapter or see how it began, then that taps into a specific area of my brain, and I'm like, okay, that's what I need to highlight when I'm writing. And then I try to incorporate that.
Oh,
And
I love that.
like music, like hit that certain note. It's like music. So, okay, yes. And excuse me as I'm pausing because I'm just making this connection now. Um, when I read books that are not even noted as being lyrical, but just hit me in that sense. When I read books in general that I really enjoy, it's like music. So certain notes are being hit. And so I want to hit those certain notes. So then I replicate that feeling. Yeah.
Wow, so it's less of you're looking to these other books and kind of I guess like getting topic or structure inspiration.
Yeah.
It's more so, there's this feeling that is
Yeah.
captured and you're
Yeah.
trying to capture that same feeling. And before you do, it's so helpful to like read through those and invoke those feelings within yourself.
Yeah.
Wow, I love that. I did have a question prepared that was, what is your creative process like? But I think backing up a little bit, you mentioned that you haven't done an MFA, you haven't had you didn't major in creative writing or anything like that. So I'm so curious, what was your journey like to becoming a writer? Did you always know that this was something you wanted to do? Yeah, I would love to hear about that.
Yeah. I'm very fortunate, and my dad was a writer. He
Wow.
he unfortunately never published, but
Okay.
his work was the most incredible work that I've read to this day. And maybe I'm biased, but I'm probably biased. But yeah, he was quite gifted. And so when I grew up, I was surrounded by a lot of books and conditioned, in a sense, to appreciate books and words. And like when I was younger, my dad had this book, and it was of Scottish poetry. And I
Hmm.
was in grade school, and I would sit in the backyard and I read The Highwayman over and over again.
Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, in that I was always in my head, and imagination was something that was applauded, which was great. Um, and I think, yeah, I've always probably been a very internal person, and also grew up without the internet, which is lovely because when one wants to express themselves without the internet, they write stories and they write journeys. And for reference, you have the books that you're surrounded by, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, there was always that. I always loved writing stories. Um, I had a plan when I was younger to attend college or university for creative writing,
Oh,
but I got scared. I was like, what am I gonna do with creative writing? That's what I was worried about. And then also I was deeply terrified of attending school and losing the passion that I have for it because it seemed so structured. And when I write, I didn't have a structure for it. So I think there was just a lot of fear surrounding that. Um, but yeah, like when I began writing this book, I started writing it and didn't really have any plans for it to go anywhere. It was
okay.
right when the pandemic first bubbled up, and
Oh, okay.
had reached over to BC, and everything had rightfully so closed down overnight. And so I was sitting there, and I was like, "What am I going to do?" And because I need to have structure in my days, otherwise it's not a good scene.
I
Um,
relate to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that for myself personally, and maybe you can relate. Like, if I don't have structure, I get really sad.
Yeah, yeah, me
Yeah,
too. I get sad and then I don't do anything.
yeah, yeah, completely. It's like, yeah, I fall into depression at that point. So I I needed to cook up a new structure for my days, and so because I had that time, I was able to really focus on creating this
Wow.
book. Um, yeah, and I learned how to write it like just with myself, but also the books I was surrounded by because I was like, I would I was able to see how other people the forms that they used. And then I was able to take those forms as well and incorporate the ones that I loved and just kind of play around with it. It was a beautiful art piece. Yeah.
That's incredible. I love that you had, your father's support and his writing. And did he share your writing with you? His writing with you, I mean?
When I was younger, so we sadly, when I was 15, he left and he fell into substance abuse. So there was that disconnect there, and it was wild because I wasn't able to reconnect with him until just after the book was published, and then
Oh, wow.
yeah, but it it was I wasn't actually able to talk to him because I was told by his social work at the time that he was in the hospital and was passing. And at that point in time that I arrived and had known about it, he was already gone, like on life support. So
Oh,
I was no, I was so lucky. I was able to hold his hand and um, emotionally like share my love and everything with him. But um, I'd like to believe that he can see it.
yeah, I think he can. That's what
Yeah,
I believe.
yeah, yeah.
And it's incredible that there that imagination was fostered within you from a young age. And I totally understand, the fear of not wanting to study creative writing for all the reasons that you mentioned. I actually I studied STEM in undergrad, and
Oh,
then I'm now pursuing an MFA in creative writing. But thank you. One of my other favorite writers, Alexander Chi, in one of his essays, he about MFA programs, he writes that oftentimes people ask me, "Is this the right decision for me?" And his take is that if you want to be a writer, if you want to be a published author, what you have to do is write and you need to figure out like what is the best. You need to write and read and figure out what is the like how can you make yourself do that. And
Mhm.
I grew up in a family where imagination was like not encouraged, and everyone in my family is very STEM minded. And I always was like, oh, I'm like the odd one out here. And like, no one kind of understood why I was the way I was. And, looking back now, I really just think my parents did not understand how meaningful art could be, and how meaningful imagination could be. And I think, they're trying to now, but it was very difficult, and I never felt that support. And I often felt I had to push that side of me down. And one of the biggest things I'm just about to finish my first year in the program, and I feel like what it has given me is that social support
Oh,
and just that
beautiful.
freedom to like let that part of me out, because
Yeah.
I was writing before, but it still felt so repressed. And um I just think that freedom to be imaginative and encouragement as a writer is, we often see it as a solitary process, but it's so significant to have that support, especially as I'm sure you can relate as you're working on like a longer project, and to sustain that. And I'm curious what you mentioned you wrote it during, once lockdown started. What was that process like? Because I mean, even though like generally writing is considered solitary, in that setting, even more so.
Yeah.
Um, and you mentioned how impactful reading is, and I think that's so true. I obviously learn some craft elements from my professors, but what helps me the most in my own writing is reading books that inspire me. And yeah, what was your process like writing When My Ghost Sings, and how'd you come up with the idea, and what was it like to execute it?
Yeah, I think so. When I first began writing it, the first two or three drafts, it was very point A to point B. Like
Okay.
I'm trying not to use this word, but I don't have a better word for it. Like it was dull. So it was very like matter of fact. Like this
Mhm.
is what happened, and then this is what happened, and then this is what happened, and it was like that. And I was writing it out, and that was how I was going to write it. Because again, like I was writing it for myself too. And I also there was a large part of myself that was like I say like I don't really know why I was writing it, but it was to put that structure in my day as we were discussing before. So I was writing it like that, and also had like another side story, and I'd only written no, yeah, it was about two or three paragraphs for this story. And I don't know what happened. Like sometimes I like to believe that there's your like little writing spirits, right?
I love that little writing spirits.
Your writing spirits. And I I just melded the two together for like the beginning of the first chapter. And then it started to form. And the whole time I was doing it like that, there was this little voice in the back of my head that was like, this is not how a memoir is supposed to look. You're not supposed to do this. That you're breaking this rule that you don't even really know about, but you're breaking this rule. Like this is not the way it's supposed to look. And I just had to keep telling that voice to, shush down, because then there was this other part of me that was just like, this is the story. This is the story. This is the story. And then that was where the blossoming took place. And I had also taken time, like, yes, the pandemic had just taken off, but there were telephone calls and FaceTime videos. And I had shared with close friends what I had so far. And my close friends, they liked it. They wanted me to keep going. And so having that outside validation and support kind of gave me that beautiful, gentle nudge that I think all people need when they're creating something artistic. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. This is a guess, but you mentioned, I mean, I was surprised listening to you talk about it felt like point A to point B and you were getting stuff down because, the style of your memoir, one of the most striking things is how poetic it is and how poetic the language is. And so my guess is that was the story that you incorporated into it, did that have ghost in it? And was that like a more poetic style?
It's like I said, it was only 2 or 3 paragraphs. So Ghost actually didn't appear as a character until I had been writing it. I think I was on like the 4th draft.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because initially, and I'll be honest, like when I had my stroke, I truly felt like in the beginning that I was in somebody else's body when I had returned home from the hospital. And I had told my partner, the boy at that time, I had mentioned, that I feel like a ghost. And so
Okay.
being able to really express those feelings in a very non-apologetic or uncareful way where I was doing it or writing it to educate people. I was writing this for myself, and I wasn't concerned um, about educating people on anything about my life or what I was going through. It was just what I was writing.
That's amazing. And it's so interesting. Like, I've had the same transition. I had initially started writing my nonfiction work as a memoir, trying to I mean, my biggest goal was to educate people because I was so angry at
Yeah.
the medical system and a lot of the things that I had gone through. And also the fact that whenever I tried to talk to people about it, there was like this disbelief or surprise. And I was just like, I need people to know. And so I thought the best way to do that would be to go from, point A to point B. And I just couldn't make myself do that. And then like I kept getting stuck or like stuck in like trauma or of whatever experiences those were, and it didn't feel true to how I was experiencing the memories and experiences now, especially because a lot of I didn't remember huge chunks of it, and huge chunks of it were told to me. And it just didn't feel like I was like, oh, I'm writing this very logical list of like things that happened, but I don't even remember like,
Yeah.
40% of them.
Yeah.
And so, and then I had actually started writing something that was more like a combination of like letters from me to my past self and like other things. And then I got caught in the same thing that was like, oh, but memoirs aren't like this. Like I don't know. This is not what's going to help people. This is not going to like, I don't know. And what I really realized is, well, then I read your book, and then around the same time, I was listening to somebody talk about how within the context of disability and illness, often, these aren't topics that have been widely covered.
Mhm.
And yours is the first memoir I've read about stroke, and especially a stroke happening to someone who is so young. And I feel like, there's so much there. And I heard this somewhat, I'm forgetting who, somebody, I was reading something or listening to something, and someone was like, how can we expect that these things that have not been written about before are going to fit under the same structures and forms that
Mhm.
are used to talk about other things. And it's like reminiscent of how different cultures have different forms of storytelling that
Mhm.
are so different, and they really like I just came to this realization that like a story knows how it wants to be told. And it can
Yeah.
also be told in so many different ways. You're not like tied to one telling, but your book and Ghost in particular, I was like, I've never seen, illness and recovering from it represented this way. And there's just this aspect of, you use Ghost as like a device to show, who you were before and your
Mhm.
memories. And I think there's like this universality to that and illness and disability and how it feels when something like
Yeah.
that happens to you and the identity transformation that you go through. And
Yes.
I am just loving hearing how Ghost originated, and I'm curious. So, were the first couple drafts they were those that point A to point B, and then
Mhm.
eventually you were like, "Oh, this is not working, and I'm going to incorporate
It wasn't
Ghost."
even that conscientious. Like I I think what happened is when I got to the point of the third draft where I was revising it, there was this big part of me that was like, this is boring. And you have to be in love with your story, I think,
Yeah, yeah,
because you are going to be the one who's spending the most time with it. So you have to
yeah.
be friends, you have to be lovers with the I have another voice that talks to me when I'm writing with your storyteller, right? And I thought it was boring. And so in combination with the other 2 3 paragraphs that I found, when I tied them together, then it began to feel right. Then it began to blossom. Um,
Wow.
and it was at that point in time that I was really able to dive in even further. And at that point in time, I think as well, there was this making it like a fiction rang very true because there is that disassociation when you go through such a traumatic and removed experience, right? So it works because it was very dreamlike for me. And at the same time, there was this absolute grief that I felt for the person that I was before and that disconnect that would be there and will be there forevermore. And there was this delight that I carried as well when it got published and it's on the shelves and I'm like, "Oh, you're not going to be forgotten forever, whom that person. Like
Oh
you
my
get to live
gosh.
forever."
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's a way of, you're the person you were living forever. And that resonates with me so much because I often think to myself, I'm like when I think of now who I'm writing for, I think of I'm writing for her.
Yeah.
And, she is me, but, she's not. And I think that really touched me.
Yeah.
Something that's so unique about your memoir is that it's, as I mentioned earlier, one of the few existing memoirs about amnesia in particular. And within it, you don't pose recovery and disability as this, obstacle to
Mhm.
overcome. It's more, you talk about the grief of it, and but it very much feels like it's something that you're going through and will always be going through. And the point is not to be cured and go back to the person that you were because you can't. And that's just something I would love to chat about with you and how you feel about the stereotypes surrounding amnesia and disability that have been prevalent in the media surrounding illness and disability and amnesia and how your memoir combats these.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. Initially, when I wrote my book, I didn't even add that term to myself when
Which
when
term?
the amnesia.
Okay.
Like, yeah,
Wow.
I didn't. I was like, this was my experience that I went through. And so, because, and I'll pause for a second here, because the reason that I didn't was because when I first came home from the hospital, I understood who my partner was. I understood that my name is Tara. I knew specific things. I just wasn't able to emotionally connect to them. And so my knowledge of amnesia is that you wake up and everything is brand new. And so because things weren't necessarily brand new in that sense that I recognize amnesia, right, as kind of what we're talking about as it's been displayed to the general public. I assumed that it wasn't amnesia. I didn't know what it was that I was going through.
That's
Um,
really that's really interesting and relatable on the level of there's so little representation of the diversity within even like the same diagnosis or similar types of disability that it's so hard when you start going through it and things look different for you and then you like feel so alone.
there's an absolute isolation that occurs, and I think especially if you have gone through something giant and physically on the outside you look fine, as in the exact same way that you looked before. But
Yeah.
inside, everything is different. Everything is absolutely messy and disconnected. And when other people don't see that physically, there's even more of a divide.
It's so hard. Thank you for bringing that up. I'm curious. I went through the same thing and um there were a couple years in there where I was kind of trying to like drastically alter my appearance so that like
Mm.
my outside would like even just like through my hair, like dyeing my hair, cutting my hair really short
Yeah,
because
yeah,
I wanted this feeling that like I can't look the same when I feel so different inside
yeah.
and it was so shocking to me like when I would like then look at my new appearance in the mirror I would feel even more sad.
Yeah, even more separate from yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm is that ever something that you tried to do or um
Um, I was really trying to get back and bring that connect back. So like
yeah.
I and it was difficult, not just in the emotional sense, right? But because the right side of my body was numb. And so it and it was like, you know, when you sit on your hand for too long and you get
Yeah.
that, like I describe it like
Yeah.
shooting stars, like everything was tingly on the right side of my body, and my dexterity was not very good because I mean, new neural pathways were forming, and
Yeah.
yeah, it would take time. So even the act of trying to put on eyeliner was difficult, right? Tying
Yeah.
shoes, doing up pants, like and I'm curious about you too. Like, did you have any like association for your style from before? Like
Oh,
what made you happy? Like the clothes that you used to wear and why they made you happy? Or did you find them to feel different?
that's such an interesting question. I actually also have neurological things going on one side of my body. It's my left side,
Mhm.
and I definitely felt things feel different
Yeah.
because every part of that. side feels different and more sensitive. And I was just chatting with a friend the other day how, I used to love matching my shoes to my outfits, but like I can't do that anymore because, there are so few shoe styles that are like wearable for me now. Um,
I get
and so
that.
that really,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
right afterwards, I was like, Velcro all the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Like
comfortable.
no
It's
little
like,
zippers, no little like anything. And then my ankles would get really swollen. So
yeah,
there couldn't be any pressure on there. And that's still true. And it's funny, I was talking to a friend who kind of had a similar experience due to an injury. And she was like, "Oh, I gave all of my old shoes away." And then for me, it's been almost 6 years now. And I was like, I still have them in my closet. I haven't looked at them in a few years, but I always thought, I'm saving these for when things get better.
yeah, yeah.
And I didn't do that. But in terms of like my style, I actually felt like I developed a different sense of style and like a more strong sense of style like after
Yeah.
just because I felt like it was like there were I did end up losing like most of the hobbies that I used to do, and like most of the things that brought me joy were just not possible anymore. And so I had to find these like quote small, really not that small ways to like bring myself joy every day. And one of those things was, I can express myself through my style.
Yes.
Do you relate to that? Is that what you asked that
Um,
question?
well, when I first came home, you know, her closet, I would go into it, and I didn't know what her style was. Like that was missing as well. And
Mm.
also, I felt like all of the clothes didn't fit well. They were
I
tight.
experienced that as well.
Yeah, and I'm not too sure if it was because of some of the meds I was on at the time. I was on dexamethasone, which have you heard of it?
I've
It's
heard of it. Yeah.
yeah, it's horrible. So, but when you need it, you need it. And so
Yeah.
I don't know if I was not like if I had was retaining more water or not. But everything, even the material, like I couldn't stand it. And the shoes that they hurt my feet. Um,
Mm.
it was everything was very uncomfortable. And it was funny too, because it was like the world itself was just uncomfortable. It was very
Yeah.
uncomfortable.
It like didn't feel like your world anymore. Like that's how I felt.
Yeah, yeah, and it was wild too because when I walked into my room, um, I I was absolutely amazed because it was like I was walking into a room that like inside somewhere I could associate with this room and connect with
Okay.
it. Um, but it was like walking into a different space in somebody else's room. And I could see just how amazing this woman had been. Like the bed was unmade, but the room was so colorful and there was these large windows and there were books on the windowsills and like beautiful books and thick books. And when I opened her journals, the handwriting was just it was beautiful and it was all over the page. And I could tell in looking at her, she was just this beautiful mess, you know? And there was artwork everywhere that she had painted. And I, at the same time, was furious.
Yeah.
I was furious.
I
Yeah. So it's like,
I relate to that feeling of fury.
yes. Yeah. And I think like it's had people talk to me and been like, "Oh, like this is such a beautiful, gentle book, like, and that's the way that you saw it." And I'm like, "Yeah, no, I mean, maybe I didn't express it. It took the choice. chose
No,
not to.
I
I was
felt the fury
angry.
in the book. I felt that, and I felt that like more than anything, it felt like this is someone grieving and coming to terms with losing this
Yeah,
part of themselves and this other person that
yeah.
was them. And I don't know if maybe that's like something that you pick up more if you have had that experience,
Maybe,
but
yeah, because those are the parts that call you. Those are the parts that relate to you. Those are that the connect occurs, right?
yeah. Yeah, definitely. That I'm really glad we talked about that. It's sometimes hard to it can be so hard to explain all of these like complex feelings. I mean, you did it so well in your book. And I think that, you know, the form really like the content influences the form and the form influences the content, but the way, you know, we see Ghost and you working through everything is very um it's I feel like you did it in a way where we can go like be on that journey. It did not feel like point A to point B because the journey wasn't linear, and you
Yeah.
really express that. And I think that's something I hear about in disability and conversations all the time. Like I don't know if you've heard of the term crip time, um,
No, inform
but
me.
it's basically like the concept that, you know, time looks very different for us, and like, you know, the times where we are sick and in bed, or, you know, having symptoms of our illness, like that time passes so differently than the time that, you know, we're out and doing things. And there's this it's just like a strange way, or like it becomes a strange way, and maybe to others is a strange way of operating in the world, where we can't be confined by the way like capitalism sees time, for
Mhm.
example, or like it's like the even the idea of like you should be able to like work through something point A to point B. Often that's not the way to best express something, and I feel like it also encompasses that concept, and I feel like your book is such an example of that as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing too. The amount of hours that I spent laying in bed and staring out the window from my bed and just in this space and place and time that was like actually non-existent in reality, like, and the amount of hours that I did that, I have no idea.
I,
Those
I
were
have a very similar experience.
yeah,
And I actually remember there was a window like right across from this like twin bed. And I would just be like lying there and like looking out, and there were some trees. And luckily it was like a nice scenery to look at. But
yeah,
I also could not tell you, and that's also the period where, you know, memories are foggy and I don't quite remember. And but it's kind of like lost and in there, and that's also why I can't describe what happened during that time from like point A
and
to point
that's, I
B.
think, as you mentioned that, that's where that other character comes in, because that other character is like that that subconscious being that is
Yeah.
there, and they are looking in, and they're describing things from that other point of view. it's it's almost like you need to have that when you're writing about time periods like that and disability.
Yeah, I agree, because it's like I think like, you know, the person I was like she and was before this, she has a completely different read and take on that period than I do now,
Mhm.
because of so many reasons, but there has to be a way to get both across. And I'm also very like motivated by I don't want her to just disappear. And
No,
her perspective is also really important to the story.
yeah,
And
and it's not fair.
it's not fair, exactly. um, we've kind of touched on this a bit already, but I am curious, did you face any, I guess, like personal, emotional, like social challenges as you were writing this book? And it sounded like within the book that you had asked like family members or people who knew you at the time, at least when you were right after the stroke happened, to kind of inform you on
Yeah,
certain
so
things. And
yeah,
I'm curious if that, yeah, whatever you have to say about that.
well, the person that I talk to the most about it is the boy,
Okay.
in the book, the character, the boy.
Yeah.
And I had so many conversations with him, and I would even send chapters to him, been like, "Can you please read over this and confirm?" But it was
Wow.
funny because in this, and this is where I was like, "Oh, memory is a construct," because I would do so, and he would respond with, "Yes, this is the way I remember it. But I also my memory is not very good during that time period because at the same time he was going through his own heartache and his own
Um,
trauma. And
yeah.
I, this was also 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So there's other memories of like you can only save memories for so long and what
Yeah.
they look like. And so at that point in time, I was like, okay, I've I've done my due diligence as far as checking in to ensure my memory is correct. But at the same time, this is a book with me and Ghost, and we're going to write it. And I will send him the parts that he is in so he can give me the thumbs up and approve. And, because his transition is in there as well, right? So
Yeah.
he just
Yeah.
needed to be good with that. But yeah, I mean, I think when anyone is writing a memoir, it's your memory. It is
Yeah.
your memory. And as I've stated before, memory is a construct. Like it's not like how real can memory be, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and especially if you're writing like from your point of view, what you have been through, what I have been through, what other people have been through, uh, neurologically, it's just right from your heart and your experience at that point.
Yeah, and that brings up the context or the conversation that you can go through the same thing and the same person, especially influenced by, gender, race, cultural background, upbringing. The experience is so different. And I can't believe I haven't mentioned this yet, but it was so significant to me to read this memoir and have it be written by a queer South Asian woman. Like it still remains one of the only books about illness disability that I have read by a queer South Asian woman. And so that was really meaningful to me, and I'm curious if you have anything to say about that, and also if you have any advice for other queer South Asian women, especially those who are writing about experiences like yours, just going out in the world and doing it. Like, what's your advice?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think with all books and especially memoirs, if you're uh, in a place where there's intersectionality, right? Like, just write your experience, and do so in the way that you want to do it. It's I don't think it's beneficial for anybody, and I say this meaning the audience, people who will read it, and or those who are publishing it or writing it, that you consistently follow the exact format of every other book or story that's been written. Um, I think it's okay to bend the pen, break the envelope, etc. Right?
I love that. I love the way you phrased that. And this is one of those things that, people can read within your writing and just feel that. And it's also so nice to hear you say it. I would love to know, we're kind of running towards the end of our time. Um, is there anything new that you're working on now that you would like to share?
Yeah, I have a book in the process where I've don't be too excited.
Let me be as excited as I want to be.
Yeah, and so I love fiction, and I'm dancing through a story right now that brings in magic and queerness because I am queer, and I don't know how to write about anything else with you know. So I'm playing around with that right now. I'm working on the outline and doing that right now. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, I'm so excited. I can already see like the way you write in this book. I can just see how it will seamlessly translate into writing such a beautiful, like magical queer story.
Thank you.
I'm so excited. um, Well, I like to end the all of our interviews with this one question that is really meaningful to me because it is related to the name and mission of the podcast. And it's our podcast is called Characters Like Us, and based on that name, I love to ask the question, what would you see to someone who sees themselves in the characters that you have written in your book?
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's great, and we will probably get along as friends because, I mean, in the book was me. So if you see yourself and there's that relation, then great. We probably have a lot of similar values and see the world the same way, and yeah, we'll probably be friends. But
I love that.
yeah.
Well, Tara, thank you so much for coming on this podcast today. And it has been so lovely to chat with you. And I would love to stay in touch. And yeah, just thank you for being here. It was so lovely to hear everything you had to say about this book. Um, if you're listening or watching, make sure to follow Tara on Instagram at Tara_Sidhoo_Fraser and check out her website, tarasidhoofraser.com. And also to stay up to date on our podcast, make sure to follow us on Instagram and subscribe on YouTube. We are at Characters Like Us Pod. Once again, Tara, thank you so much for being here, and we will see you next time.
Awesome.
Bye.